Welcome to Reddit After Hours. This is r/relationship advice, where OP's girlfriend runs into her ex-boyfriend and gets so happy that she completely forgets that he exists. Our first Reddit post is from Throra13181, titled, "Wife and I ran into her ex at the mall and it sent me for a loop." So, for some context, my wife Carla and I have been together for 4 years, married for 5 months. We have a solid relationship and no real trust issues or anything like that. She's an amazing person and I love her endlessly. Something about her that's important to this situation is that she's always been one of those people who holds grudges forever. Like, she's still mad about a girl stealing her seat in ninth grade type of grudges. If you cross her, she holds it against you forever. I think that's what makes this whole thing feel really off. We were out shopping on Saturday at a mall about an hour from our home, and at this point, the day was winding down and we were grabbing a bite to eat in the food court. That's when we ran into Chris. Now, Chris is the ex. She was with Chris from 16 to 24. He's the only ex that she ever really talks about, and every time she has, it's been something negative. They fought a lot. They had a messy breakup, they were toxic, and they both cheated on each other, the whole 9 yards. We lived in the same city as him our entire relationship, and other than a brief blip while dating, we've never once bumped into him. But we ran into him an hour away from our home at a random day at the mall, and her reaction just totally sent me for a loop. I was mid-sentence when I saw her eyes just lock onto something behind me, and immediately she lights up. Big smile. Before I even turn to see who it is, she's already standing up to greet him, just beaming. They hug, and not just some quick, like, oh, hey, hug. Like, it felt like it was a, quote, so amazing to finally see you again type of hug. And then suddenly, I'm just standing there, completely shut out of the conversation while they start catching up. I didn't even know who he was at the time. I haven't seen him in years, and I had to piece it together as they chatted. I thought she'd introduce me, but nope, I'm just standing there while she's laughing, fully engaged with him, even some playful touching. At one point, she even playfully shoved his arm. Now, I'm not a jealous person, and I honestly have zero problem with her being friends with whomever she chooses. But my impression of her relationship with him was different than from what I was seeing. I figured I was overreacting or reading too much into it, but I still felt a bit weird about it. Like a third wheel, if I'm being honest. So I just tried to hint that it was time to go by picking up our trays and making it very clear that I was ready. Neither of them noticed this though, so I walked off, tossed the trays, and came back. Still, they were talking when I came back. They finally wrap it up after a few more minutes, and they hugged again, and then he was off. And then, without a single word about it, she just looks at me and goes, "Okay, let's stop at Lululemon and Indigo before we head out." Like nothing even happened. I kept waiting for her to bring him up, maybe say something about how weird it was, or at least acknowledge him or their conversation in some way, but she just acted like it was nothing. We shopped for about another 45 minutes like nothing even happened. Once we got in the car, I waited to see if she would bring it up, but she still didn't. Small talk died after a few minutes after we got on the highway, and she was completely glued to her phone. So I asked who she was texting. She says the group chat, which the group chat is her 3 best friends, Cheyenne, Darcy, and Julia. I said, "What's the topic of conversation?" She smiled and said, "I'm telling them how crazy it is that I ran into Chris." I just say, "Yeah, that's pretty wild." She agrees and says, "Yeah, it's insane. What are the chances?" And then she just keeps texting, and I kind of expected that to kick off our conversation about it, but it still didn't. That night at home, after she had been on her phone for the majority of the night with the girls still chatting about it, I decided to bring it up. I told her that I felt a bit like a third wheel when Chris showed up since she didn't even introduce me. Felt like I wasn't even there because she didn't even introduce me. She lightheartedly said, "Oh, he knows who you are," then gave me a quick peck on the neck. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't exactly handle this great. I brought it up in a very light-hearted and non-serious tone. That's just how I deal with conflict, so it's 100% on me for not communicating where my head was at, and I can't fault her for being so nonchalant about it. I left it there for the night and thought that I'd take another stab at it the next day once I had some time to process. But it's been days now, and I still feel just really confused about this whole thing. I'm really struggling trying to process how I'm feeling about it all and judging if I even have a right to feel upset. Never run into one of my exes before, so this is kind of new territory for me. And then later on, OP gives us this update. Carla and I sat down and had a long talk. She was experiencing emotions similar to mine throughout the week. How can that be, you might ask? After sitting down and using a lot of the top comments here as a guideline to get my feelings out, namely the feeling of being lost and confused, we were able to get a dialogue going and figure out my/our emotions. The biggest realization that I had while replying to comments and what was fully realized when Carla and I talked was that I had felt abandoned and disconnected from her for the first time in our relationship. We have a little phrase that we say called, quote, book page, to signify that our minds, emotions, and hearts are on the same page. We say it a lot because that's just how we feel. When Chris and Carla split at the mall, she just didn't acknowledge it or give any indication that she was ready to sync up our emotions and experiences from that encounter. That's what really threw me for a loop and had me spiraling for days. She knew that it was a mistake on her part and had every intention of talking to me and getting back on the same page. She was actually the one to initiate our talk when she got home yesterday. I was planning to wait until after a bit later after eating, but she kicked it off almost immediately. She was and is incredibly sorry for how I was feeling. She didn't realize it was as severe as it was, which is why she had put off talking until she had figured out her own feelings with it. I can already predict the comments rolling in saying we're both bad communicators and we both did the same unhealthy thing of bottling up our feelings instead of just talking to our spouse. If that was the norm, I would completely agree with you. This is the first time I've ever experienced this feeling though, and as I've said, it's also the first time that Carla has done this as well. This was an outlier, not the normal rhythm of our relationship. As soon as we were able to talk about our thoughts, those feelings of disconnection went away and it immediately felt like a 1,000,000-pound weight had been lifted off my heart. We then started to compare our experiences and what happened and our thoughts and feelings. We went over a lot, so I'm just going to throw a few things in point because the conversation jumped around a lot and I'm just going to throw a few things down that are important. Carla feels fun throwback type of excitement when talking with Chris and reminiscing about high school and old times. Chris added her on Instagram that night after they ran into each other at the mall and she added him back and they started DMing. He had broached the idea of meeting up for coffee to catch up when they were talking at the mall. She said that she might be open to it, but she hasn't committed yet. She talked to the girls in the group chat because they were all there during the, quote, Chris era and had talked in the past about what meeting up with him might look like again. I told her that I tried to check her phone to put my mind at ease, and she said that she was sorry that the password had changed. She changed it due to a misunderstanding with an instruction from her new Works mail app. She changed her phone password from my birth year, her birth year, our meeting year, to our meeting year, my birth year, then her birth year. Just a reorganization of numbers. She had changed it around November or December, and I just hadn't needed to touch her phone to get in, so I didn't know yet. Carla said that she does still have some lingering feelings for Chris. It's not something that she feels detracts from or impacts her feelings for me at all, but she was brutally honest and said that it's more of a physical lust attraction, not feelings of love. Carla has a very dominant and assertive personality type, and so does Chris. They never worked as a couple for that reason, and they connected physically really well though. Our relationship works the opposite way, and she knows that I'm the puzzle piece for her heart and soul, and no matter anything else, she wants to spend her life with me, and I feel the same way about her. And finally, Carla said that she wanted to meet up with Chris for coffee. She messaged him at the end of our talk and they confirmed it for today. It's 1:22 p.m. here and they met up for coffee at 11 a.m. I checked in with her and she said that it's going really well. OP, I'm glad you were able to figure everything out with your wife. And, I'm not trying to judge your relationship dynamic. I'm glad that works for you and your wife and you could come to an understanding. However, if that was me and I acted that playfully with an ex right in front of my wife and then started messaging a group chat talking about all the good times with that ex and my wife found out, And then I invited that ex out to coffee so I could further reminisce and talk, and then told my wife, hey, my coffee date, time, whatever, with my ex is going great. I think she would have literally stabbed me. I think she would have stabbed me in the mall, like for not introducing her and acting so flirtatious and playful with an ex right in front of her. I don't know, OP. It's a weird dynamic, but I'm glad it works for you. I hope everything goes well. And I hope she at least just remains faithful to you and you guys have a wonderful marriage going forward. Our next Reddit post comes from Throra Technical Pie, titled, I almost cheated on my long distance boyfriend. How do I tell him? For context, my boyfriend and I are currently waiting for my spouse visa. I could have been with him by now, but I don't want to leave my job until I get my residence card. Lately, I've had guys hitting on me a lot, and I honestly don't get it. When I was single, most of them wanted to just hook up and have fun, which is why I never took any of them seriously. But now that I fully announced my engagement, people are suddenly coming back. Guys I used to talk to, date, or go out with, it's really insane. I never entertained most of it, but some genuinely became my friends and were there when I needed to get out. One night, I was out with some coworkers. There was this guy who had been hitting on me every time he saw me. He's a paramedic. We initially matched on Tinder years ago, but we never met in person, just chatted briefly. I was probably 20 at the time when we swiped right on each other. Anyway, my coworkers kept giving me shots, and I told them that I'd had enough, but they guilt-tripped me into taking more, saying that I should stay just a little longer. At this point, I was super drunk, dancing with them, and when suddenly someone dragged me away from them on the dance floor. It was him. I told him to leave me the F alone, and he ignored me and tried to dance with me, and then asked, look at me, am I not your type? I stared at his face, and I'll admit it, he's really, really good looking, but I love my fiance. He almost kissed me, and that's when it really hit me. I pulled away and I left him there, just stunned. I told my coworkers that I was going home, and I ended up crying in the cab home. I felt so disappointed in myself for letting things get to that point. OP, for one, you kind of sound like you have bad friends. When you say that you've had enough to drink and they keep encouraging you to drink more and more, that's not okay. You clearly know your limits, you set a boundary, and they kept pressuring you to drink more. That's not healthy. Secondly, I don't know how your friends feel, but I don't think you did anything wrong here. This guy tried to dance with you, you told him to leave you alone, and in your still, drunken state where your decision making is, impaired, he tried to get you to kiss him, and you looked at him and even in an impaired state, pushed him away, left him, and didn't cheat on your boyfriend. OP, you didn't do anything wrong. I mean, unless there's something that I'm missing. Like, it sounds like you did everything right. Even drunk, you stayed faithful to your boyfriend, and you told a dude who you thought was attractive to leave you alone. And OP, it's okay to think that other people are attractive when you're in a relationship. It's not okay to touch other people or message other people or emotionally cheat on your fiance. But you did nothing wrong, OP. You actually did a really good job. Our next Reddit post comes from Rival Kerr, titled, I, a 25-year-old male, just discovered that the girl I'm going out with is 18 and I don't know what to do. So, like I said, I, a 25-year-old male, started going out with this girl who's only 18. We met at a nightclub about a month ago, and I met her in my hometown. I live in a different country now than my hometown, but I was back home for the holidays at that point. When she met me, she introduced herself as a 20-year-old, and the only other information that I got from her was her name. And for the context of this post, let's give her name Sarah. We didn't hook up at all that night, but ended up having some long and deep conversations back at her place. The following day, we went out for a date, and during that date, those deep conversations continued, and we spoke a lot about relationships, work, and the future. The date, too, was very good, and I felt like our ideologies and values really matched. That was the day that we also had our first kiss. After that, we went out multiple times in the span of 2 weeks. She met a lot of my close friends, and I met her mother, and in general, we just had a great time with each other. When my trip home was about to end, I was dejected since I felt like this would end with the distance, but on the contrary, it didn't. After I went back home, the conversations actually picked up a lot. We started speaking to each other in greater frequency and quite naturally also. It just kind of happened. The conversations are very deep and also flowed very quickly and naturally. The way I described it to my close friends is a feeling where you've known someone for far longer than you actually have. We spoke a lot about things like hobbies and other lightweight stuff too. But we also spoke about past trauma, past relationships, and the sort. Now would be a good time to also mention that I recently, about a year ago, came out of a long-term relationship that lasted about 8 years, and 5 of my relationships have also been long distance. I also couldn't stop myself from comparing these 2 long-distance relationships from my last previous one that ended a year ago and this current one, and realizing that the distance in this newfound relationship felt a lot better. She makes me feel secure and very safe. During our conversations, it came up that she actually already has plans to move to the same country that I currently live in. This was actually a plan that she had before she met me. However, more immediately, she has plans to come visit me in a few months on this next coming holiday and meet some of my friends here. Now comes the issue, however. Out of nowhere early today, she messaged me letting me know that she had something quite important to tell me. The too long didn't read version of the text is that she broke the fact that she lied to me about her age when she first met me and that she is actually 18, not 20. She was silent about it because she thought that nothing would come of this relationship. However, once things became more serious, she felt that she had to tell me instead of living that lie. Now I'm really confused with what to do. I still like this person that I've gotten to know, but at the same time, she is young. I've only ever dated people around my age, like plus or minus 2 years. I had to come to terms with her being 20, but 18 scares me. I'd appreciate honest and straight feedback. OP, I don't think the main issue here is the age difference, which honestly, for me, that would be, at least in my opinion, for me personally, not dogging anybody else or anything, but for me, that would be too big of an age difference. Like when I was in high school, I only wanted to date high schoolers. When I got into college, even if they were an 18-year-old senior, just dating a high schooler just felt totally wrong to me, right? When I got out of college and I was like, on my own and starting off my career and all that, dating a college student, even a senior, just kind of, I don't know, it just felt weird, right? Like I was taking a step like back in age. I don't know. Like maybe it's just a mental thing. I was probably totally overthinking it, not dogging anyone else. But anyway, the age is not the big issue. The big issue is that she straight up lied to you about her age for no reason. Like you were a total stranger. Who cares what you think of her age, right? But she still lied to you and she kept that lie going for a while. She could have told you that night when you were having deep conversations at your house, but she just kind of let that string on. And if she's willing to lie to you about something so meaningless, what else could she lie to you about in the future? But also, that's just a small hunch. I mean, she is young, maybe just a little bit immature, and maybe that was just kind of a one-off, but I don't know, OP. If I were you, if you really, really like her, maybe continue to get to know her, maybe give her a chance to show you that it was just a one-off. She could be honest with you and just kind of see where things go from there. Sounds like you have a really strong connection. Maybe just give it a little more time and explore it, but maybe make her understand that, she can't lie to you in the future. Relationships are built on trust, and, you got to maintain that somehow, and you got to start somewhere. That was Reddit After Hours, bringing you r/relationship advice. Thank you all so much for listening, and if you like these stories, like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below for any future Reddit subs that you'd like us to cover, as we post new Reddit videos almost every single day.